China is lashing out at the U.S. this morning in direct response to some scathing comments by Vice President Mike Pence. The vice president blasted the Asian nation Thursday during a speech at Washington's Hudson Institute, doubling down on President Trump's accusations last week of Chinese interference in America's political system, including in the upcoming midterms. Watch this.
Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach to advance its influence and benefit its interests. It's employing this power in more proactive and coercive ways to interfere in the domestic policies of this country and to interfere in the politics of the United States.
All right, so the comments come ahead of a new Pentagon-led report set to be released today, calling China a, quote, growing risk to the U.S. defense industry. Joining me now is David Rothkopf, visiting scholar at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Great to have you with us, David. Let me first off by getting your reaction to China's response. They're obviously calling the vice president's comments, quote, unwarranted and creating something out of thin air. How do you explain this sudden pivot and shift in this administration's policy towards China?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. First of all, the administration is ratcheting up pressure on China on trade, and I think they're looking for cover for that. And, it's been a bad week for the U.S.-China relationship. We've been rightly attending to the Kavanaugh issue because it's a big issue here at home. But in the most important bilateral relationship in the world, the United States has seen U.S. naval vessels have problems with Chinese naval vessels in the South China Sea this week. Secretary Mattis has had to cancel meetings with the Chinese this week because they weren't going to meet with him. Larry Kudlow yesterday at the Washington Economic Club said we are going to be turning up the heat in terms of trade. I think the administration, for a variety of reasons, including the election, want to make China a bogeyman. But I think there's another reason, and I think we shouldn't lose sight of it. By saying that China is meddling in the election, they're distracting from the fact that the real country that's meddling in the election, the one that the intelligence community thinks is meddling in the election, is Russia. And of course, Russian meddling in the election is a big problem for Trump, with Mueller out there, and they're doing everything they can to distract from it. If I may say one more thing on this, while Vice President Pence is making these assertions, the day before, his Secretary of Homeland Security said, no, China's not really meddling in the election, and the intelligence community doesn't seem to think they're doing it, and there doesn't seem to be much evidence that they're doing anything like what Russia has been doing. So I see this as a bit of a distraction.
So, David, Vice President Pence says that China wants a different U.S. president. Here's why.
And when it comes to influencing the midterms, you need only look at Beijing's tariffs in response to ours. The tariffs imposed by China to date specifically targeted industries and states that would play an important role in the 2018 elections. By one estimate, more than 80% of U.S. counties targeted by China voted for President Trump and I in 2016. Now China wants to turn these voters against our administration.
All right, so you heard him there. He's saying China wants to turn these voters against the administration. How do you interpret this in terms of in terms of the accusation that he's making that China wants to essentially, for more or less, vote this president out of office?
Well, I think the professional foreign policy response to that is duh. That's the way governments actually work, right? The Europeans, when we were imposing trade pressure on them, said, okay, we're going to go after bourbon and we're going to go after Harley Davidsons because they know that that's pressure on Mitch McConnell and it's pressure on Paul Ryan. The Chinese are doing exactly what any other country would do. And after all, it's not just Chinese tariffs on us. It's us launching a trade war against them. And their defense is somewhat stronger since we simultaneously have done that with the Europeans. We did it with our North American partners. We've done it with the steel industry. We've done it with the aluminum industry. We're the ones that are on the offensive right now on the trade war front.
Yeah, so it always makes sense from their perspective to want a different administration. Let me switch gears for a moment, David, and ask you about this Reuters report. They have seen a copy of a 150-page Pentagon-led report that is due out later today. It says that China represents a, quote, significant significant and growing risk to the supply of materials vital to the U.S. military. What is your reaction to that? Are we, as an American government and by extension the military, vulnerable to Chinese supplies, especially in, information technology that could really impact how the military operates and, more importantly, the relationship between the U.S. and China?
Well, of course, as different parts of the world develop capabilities, particularly in the areas of technology, and they become leaders in that area, that does create vulnerabilities for us. It's not just China. A lot of chips are produced in Taiwan. Certain other technologies are produced elsewhere. But having said that, as the Chinese economy grows, we're going to have to be careful that they don't corner the market in any technology, or that they don't embed devices within their own technologies that may enable them to have an advantage later on. There was a story yesterday about an allegation that tiny chips were placed in American Apple products and other products. Now, I'm not so sure whether that story is going to bear out, but it's certainly the kind of thing that we need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, what a departure from the president referring to President Xi of China as a close friend and somebody that he really enjoyed his time with, to now seeing this administration accusing China of trying to undermine this very administration.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.